The steel gates of the penitentiary swung open this week, releasing a figure whose very presence sends a silent tremor through the local underworld. For the authorities and the community alike, the air is thick with tension. A high-ranking enforcer, a man who once stood as a pillar within the Tribesmen organization, has walked free after serving time for an act that nearly ended the life of a rival leader. The man in question, known as Akistote, or simply Taye, to those in his circle, was not just any foot soldier. He was the sergeant-at-arms, a title commanding fear and respect. His target, Joshua Masters, the infamous founder of the Killer Bees. What makes this narrative so unsettling is not just the violence that occurred, but the deep, shattered history between these two men. They were once inseparable allies, but now, with Taye's release, the threat of fatal retribution hangs heavy over the streets. To understand the gravity of this release, we must rewind to a pristine afternoon in April 2019. The setting was far removed from the gritty back alleys, usually associated with gang conflict. It was a high-end Harley-Davidson showroom in Newmarket, Auckland. Joshua Masters had arrived to test drive a motorcycle, likely feeling a false sense of security in such a public, commercial space. He took a powerful machine out for a run, the engine roaring as he navigated the local roads, but unbeknownst to him, a shadow from his past was lying in wait. When Masters returned to the dealership, guiding the heavy bike toward the service entrance, the trap was sprung. Taye had positioned himself with chilling calculation. As Masters came within range, the ambush began. Taye produced a black, semi-automatic 9mm device and initiated the attack. A single kinetic round was discharged, bypassing the bike's fairings and impacting Masters with devastating precision, striking his spinal column. The effect was instantaneous. The founder of the Killer Bees lost all control, collapsing onto the asphalt driveway, the heavy weight of the Harley-Davidson pinning him to the ground. But the encounter was far from over. In that chaotic moment, the intent was clearly to ensure a permanent end to Masters' story. However, fate, or perhaps a mechanical failure, intervened in a way that defies statistical probability. As the mechanism of Taye's weapon attempted to cycle a second round, it malfunctioned. Witnesses describe a desperate, frantic moment where Taye attempted a manual reload, stepping closer to the defenseless victim. He raised the weapon again, targeting the most vital area, and pulled the trigger twice. Silence. The jammed device failed to discharge. A third attempt revealed the magazine was empty. Chaos erupted around the showroom as bystanders scrambled for safety. Masters lay trapped and grievously injured, his life hanging by a thread. While Taye, realizing the final act had failed, fled the scene. He did not run forever though. In a strange twist of conscience or strategy, he later walked into a police station to surrender, refusing bail. But the question remained, what could drive a sergeant-at-arms to turn on his own brother with such lethal intent? The aftermath of the showroom incident unfolded not in the streets, but within the solemn confines of the Auckland District Court, where the narrative took a turn that confused even seasoned investigators. Initially facing the most severe charges possible for the attack, Taye entered a guilty plea to a lesser, albeit serious, charge, wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm. The judicial system handed down a sentence of 7 years, a significant stretch of time that reflected the severity of the act. Yet it was Taye's demeanor during these proceedings that sent ripples through the gallery. Standing before the judge, the hardened enforcer did not offer defiance or silence. Instead, he expressed a profound, almost haunting sense of regret. He made a request that is rarely heard. In cases involving high-level organized crime, he asked for restorative justice. This legal process is designed to bring victims and offenders together to repair the harm caused, rather than focusing solely on punishment. It was a desperate attempt to mend a bond that had been shattered by the pull of a trigger. When questioned about his relationship with the man he had paralyzed, Taye's words were heavy with emotion. "Josh was my brother," he told the court. "I loved him. He always had my back, and I had his." It was an admission that hinted at a deep, personal betrayal rather than a simple business dispute. However, despite the offender's apparent remorse, Joshua Masters refused to participate. The victim remained silent, rejecting the olive branch. Whatever catalyst had turned these brothers in arms into mortal enemies remained locked away, protected by the underworld's strict code of silence. To truly comprehend the magnitude of this fracture, one must look back at what these two men built together. The attack sent shockwaves through New Zealand not merely because of the violence, but because it signified a civil war. The Killer Bees were not always a rival faction. Originally, they were the proving grounds, a feeder club for the tribesmen. They were the young prospects, the street soldiers testing their mettle before graduating to the established motorcycle club. Masters was the architect of this system. Described by associates as a charismatic leader with ruthless business instincts, he navigated the criminal hierarchy with a precision that earned him a senior rank within the tribesmen themselves. But empires built on illicit foundations are often unstable. In 2008, Masters' reign faced a catastrophic interruption. He was targeted by law enforcement and convicted on major narcotics and money laundering charges, earning a sentence of 10 years and 5 months. It was during this decade-long incarceration that the dynamic shifted. Inside the harsh environment of the prison system, the seeds of a new power structure began to flourish. By the time Masters walked free in May 2018, the landscape had changed dramatically. The Killer Bees were no longer a loose band of subservient street kids. Under the pressure of the prison environment, they had evolved into a formidable force known as the Swarm. This was now a disciplined army, 300 strong, known for intense confrontations with both inmates and corrections officers. They had climbed the ranks to become the 4th largest gang in the nation. Masters returned not as a subordinate, but as the head of a beast that had outgrown its master. The tension between the old guard tribesmen and the rising Swarm was inevitable, a powder keg waiting for a spark. Less than a year after his release, that spark ignited in the driveway of a Harley-Davidson dealership, changing the course of gang history in Auckland forever. Against all medical odds, the founder of the Killer Bees survived. The attack in the showroom had been designed to be final, yet Joshua Masters clung to life. The physical toll, however, was immense. The injury to his spinal cord left him paralyzed, requiring full-time care and intense rehabilitation. For a time, his presence on the streets vanished, leading many to believe the Swarm had lost its head. But in a display of sheer defiance that cemented his legend within the underworld, Masters re-emerged in 2022. He appeared at the Killer Bees' annual gathering, not on the standard two-wheeled machine of his past, but riding a custom-built quad bike. It was a powerful statement. He was broken, perhaps, but unbowed, and once again in control of the army he had built. However, the streets he returned to had shifted beneath his feet. During his convalescence, the balance of power in their old stomping grounds of Otara had fractured. Many of his original brothers, perhaps sensing a vacuum of power or fearing the repercussions of the showroom attack, had abandoned the Bees' colors. They pledged renewed loyalty to the tribesmen, reclaiming control of the territories they had once ruled together. Masters' return was not a hero's welcome. It was the spark for a powder keg. He sought to drag the Killer Bees out of the shadows, rebranding them as a fully independent force wearing stark white patches that demanded recognition. This push for independence reignited the rivalry with fierce intensity in 2022. The city of Auckland witnessed a series of reciprocal exchanges, drive-by incidents and firebombings that threatened to spiral into a full-scale conflict. While authorities noted that no further lives were lost during this specific flare-up, the heavy firepower utilized by both factions raised alarm bells. The violence was escalating rapidly, fueled by disputes over territory and a hatred that had boiled over. It took the intervention of high-ranking police officials and senior gang members to negotiate a fragile ceasefire, a truce that has, somewhat miraculously, held until today. While this territory war raged on the outside, Taye was fighting a different battle behind bars. Since August 2021, he had been applying for parole, desperate to regain his freedom. Each early attempt ended in rejection. In 2025, after nearly 5 years in custody, he presented a plan to live in a house arranged by his family, claiming he had surrendered his patch and left the gang life behind. The parole board was unconvinced, deeming the accommodation unsafe. They argued his presence in a small town would be easily detected, posing a risk to the community. But persistence, it seems, paid off. Just this week, in his latest hearing, Taye was finally granted release to a supported accommodation facility. The conditions are strict. For the next 6 months, he is subject to an overnight curfew monitored by an electronic ankle bracelet, mandatory testing for prohibited substances, and a strict ban on associating with anyone from either the tribesmen or the Killer Bees. Now, the pieces are back on the board. With Taye's release, the silence in the underworld is deafening. Will his freedom ignite a new wave of retaliation, given the deep-seated animosity and the permanent injury inflicted upon Masters? Or will the strict parole conditions and the weary truce hold firm? Authorities remain on high alert, watching for any sign that the shadow of revenge is about to disrupt the equilibrium. As this saga continues to unfold, we will be watching closely. If you want to stay ahead of these developing stories and get the most in-depth analysis of the underworld, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Share this report to spread awareness, and let us know your thoughts on this fragile piece in the comments below. For those who want to support our investigative work, consider a super thanks. It keeps the channel thriving in a landscape where true crime content is often demonetized. Stay safe, stay curious, and we will see you in the next one.